Welcome to Pursuit and Pause. I am Paige.
And I'm Hannah, and together we are working towards living slow, intentional, and deeply rooted lives. Welcome.
Today we are talking all things slow living and kind of why we chose to take this path instead of what modern culture today wants us to take. I could define slow living as just kind of what I just said, going against the norms, the societal norms today, and just kind of living at a pace that, suits you mentally and just all the demands of your life. Just kind of, I don't know, taking it slower and taking in every moment and not trying to hurry up and get the next thing. Um, how would you describe it, Hannah?
I describe it pretty similarly. It's about living in the here and now and going at this pace that your body can maintain. There's so much that we're pushed to do more, be more, all of those things, and that's just we're not made to be running frazzled 100 different directions. We're not made. I always think of we weren't made for the input of news and information that we have. When you think back of the pandemic and we were just getting all these horrible news day in and day out from around the world, we weren't made to know all of that and to carry all of that. And I think for me, slow living is intentionally setting aside and cultivating peace and focus in what's in front of me and not racing after everything else. And also deciding if it's something I actually want versus something that I feel like I should do. Because I feel like there's a lot of things that have been sold to us as things that we're supposed to do, and they're really not.
No. Usually, things that society pushes on you will cause you anxiety, kind of, and disappointment in yourself because you're not going to ever be able to reach those high expectations that society lays on you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I drifted the other direction.
Well, and if we look at I wouldn't call it fast living, but just traditional modern culture, right, is go, go, go all the time, working nonstop. Money is the primary objective in a lot of ways. Happiness and to get there as quickly and as shortchanged as possible. Temporary highs, stuff accumulation, doing all the things, right? The achievement. Oh, my kids have to do 14 sports so they have a chance to play in college. And it's instead of taking a step and saying what actually matters to the people that are in front of me, what actually matters, we get this pressure to keep up with the Joneses. And I think it's at a pace right now that it has never been at generationally.
Yeah.
We say all the time, right? People say all the time, social media isn't real, but do we actually believe that? I think
Right.
that's hard for people to admit.
Yeah, it is. When did you first discover the slow living lifestyle?
Yeah. So I fell into minimalism in college. I came across capsule wardrobes and minimalism and Pinterest, and I just really started to fall in love with the simplicity there. But then, especially since 2020, I discovered the Sabbath. So I discovered what the true practicing Sabbath from a lot of books on Sabbath, and really kind of fell down that wormhole in the 2019, 2020, 2021. And then that of course expanded into general slow living and just intentional living, and really taking a look at, okay, so what is life meant to look like instead of what life is trying to look like? I came across the FIRE movement as well, which has always fascinated me. It's financial independence, retire early. I've always known I wanted to stay home with my kids, and I've always known that was a priority to me. That's even it was a priority even when I chose my college degree, because I knew I didn't want debt. I didn't want to have loans. I was not going to carry debt, and so I didn't want to also waste a ton of time in school with something that I couldn't do or something. But I wanted to have something, right, in case I didn't get married quickly or at all, or if something, heaven forbid, was to happen to my spouse, I would have some skills to fall back on. So that's why I ended up down the physical therapy route, because it was a functional fit for what I needed, and I loved it. I don't do that anymore for a lot of other reasons, but I always wanted that the ability to get to the point where we weren't living our lives for money, that
Mhm.
we had enough to live our life, and we could focus on what actually mattered to us versus chasing the next paycheck to buy the next big expensive thing.
Yep. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Um, I actually discovered slow living from YouTube. Mainly, it's like a lot less like in depth as your example, but my honestly, YouTube, you had me starting to watch Roots and Refuge, but even before that, a lot of you are probably familiar with Ballerina Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Just her lifestyle, living out on her beautiful ranch and just being with her kids all the time and her husband being like, working the dairy farm. I don't know. It seemed so peaceful. Like she'd walk out on her house and her views and just her life just seemed so peaceful, not stressful. I mean, I'm sure, with business comes stress because she does have a huge business, obviously. But just I don't know. I think the peace that came from her videos and just also the impact she made on her community raising these animals and bringing food to her communities kind of also drew me to being fascinated like I could live like this one day or even just like an ounce of like her one day just like that amount of peace and thinking of growing up if I grew up like that like I don't know, just the amazing, like my anxiety, I feel like would be lessened,
Right.
living, out in the country, just, providing for the community. I just feel like it's a lot better than the hustle bustle of a city. And working in a corporate office from 9 to 5 and being a slave to the computer, and nonstop and having a literal like 30-minute break some days. Like is not the life I want. I
No.
would much rather to wake up with a cup of coffee, looking out to my beautiful ranch, going to my garden, like and taking care of my kids. Like
Yeah.
that's my ideal, life I'd want to live. So that's kind of what drew me to that.
Yeah. And right, we acknowledge that there's a heavy amount of romanticization to that,
Oh,
right?
100%.
We know that it's not real, but also romanticizing the
Mm-hmm.
life you have is super important. Like you have
Oh,
to enjoy it.
yeah.
Like you can get through anything if you romanticize it and you make the best of
Mm-hmm.
it. I think so much of it is mindset. Uh,
Yeah.
Environment really helps, and there's so many
Mm-hmm.
little things you can do that make a big impact. And
Yeah.
like we said, don't tell our bosses or our companies, but neither of us like corporate America at all.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be very
Yeah.
content to leave. And we also, I think I can say for myself, and I think Paige is in the same boat. Like we're very aware of the sacrifices that you have to make
Mhm.
um, in order to live a slow, intentional life. Like we understand the financial sacrifices, the experience sacrifices, the thing sacrifices. Like I'm not naive to the cost, but I think the
Yeah,
cost is worth it.
it
And
is.
I say that because I know that the romanticization and the beautiful image can really draw people in without realizing all of the stuff that goes on behind it.
It's hard work.
It is.
Yeah, it's hard work. And, not saying like I'll even have a big full farm one day, who knows? But like that alone, like, most YouTubers we watch, do own a farm and that is their full time job. Like they may be stay at home moms, but they also are helping run a farm. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, and they may not record that hard work all the time, but I mean, Roots and Refuge does a good job of kind of portraying like how much, work it is. And she's always real honest with that. But yeah, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. You are going to wake up when you don't want to, when you feel sick, and at 5, 6 in the morning and have to go milk. Like it's just like that's just kind of the realistic point of view.
Yeah.
But all in all, I would much rather that life than being controlled by a corporate office.
Yes. The
Yeah.
pros outweigh the cons in our eyes.
Yes.
N-
Yep.
Nor do we expect everyone we know and love to agree with us. Because I know a lot of people
No.
who are like, there's no way. And that is
Mhm.
totally fine.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
But I
Maybe
look at
not.
your life and I'm like, there is no way I could live that life. I don't want that. That sounds
Yeah.
like my version of hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's fine too. There are, if you, yeah, there's pros and cons to it all, honestly.
So,
So,
what are like the key things that you're drawn to the most, whether it's activities or just different things that really are the things that you're like, yes, this is the selling feature that I'm like, come hell or high water, regardless of the cost, this is the priority.
Yeah. I think when I look back at my childhood, I think the biggest thing is if Josh and I were to have kids, I think raising them like with a mom that stayed home with them, and kind of just a like going back to the peacefulness, a peaceful environment, and a really present environment is so important. You know, growing up, like having present parents. Not that I didn't, but just and having a mom though that stays at home with you, maybe homeschools. You know that there is kind of like a big draw. Just having that good family dynamic growing up is really important. You know, and I think that's kind of I've no one's ever grown up like that in my family. So and I think there's a lot of benefits to having that dynamic of dad goes to work, you know, and provides and mother stays home, takes care of the children, that type of thing. Um, and yeah, just being able to tend the house. I think it makes sense in my brain.
Yeah.
You know, it just does. And that's like one of the biggest things is, and like the amount of money, I know you said not depending on cost, but the amount of money you save with childcare when you do stay at home, is also a big, you know, like, yes, like that makes sense, to
Yeah.
me. So,
I can't fathom the idea of working full time and most of my income
yeah.
going to childcare. Like I can't imagine two people working full time and half of their income
Mhm.
going to childcare.
Yeah.
Why would I pawn off my kids on someone else? Like
Right. Yeah. It's,
I don't understand that.
yeah, you're gonna let someone else raise your children. Now, I will say, like, if you have to, if you absolutely have to have someone, you know, watch your children while you go to work, that's okay. You know, some mothers do have to go work full time, and we're totally not judging that at all.
No.
Um, like I said, my mother had to do that, and you know, we turned out okay.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just more ideal, I would say, to be able to raise your own, you know, raise your kids full time, like other than someone else influencing them all the time,
Yeah.
more than you see them throughout the week, kind of, you know, is that's important.
Oh, it is so important. And that's something. So I always, like I've said before, like my mom was home with us my entire life. I
Yeah,
actually helped her. Like she hadn't didn't get a job, like a real job again, from right before I was born to just the last couple of years, and she only works just so that it gives her something to do a couple hours a week. But like I
yeah.
can't fathom raising my kids without that.
What is the biggest challenge to you when it comes to living intentionally?
I think the biggest challenge is like the giving up the ease, because so much of the things that come with living intentionally, so much of those things of like slow, community based, back to the roots, like farm to table kind of cooking and just raising your kids
Mhm.
fully hands on, homeschooling. So many of
Yeah,
those things significantly lack convenience and ease. And there are a lot of hard, dirty, physical work, emotional work, and you
mhm.
have to push through things that are really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
I think that's really hard. There's a level of dying to myself that I don't always appreciate. Um,
Mhm.
the time, the energy. There's just so much that goes into it of pushing through boundaries that are comfortable. That
Yeah.
that it worries me. I know, like I'm not the world's most patient human. Like I'm not, and like it scares me to think about the cost
Yeah.
of that because it's going to be hard. But I also know it's worth it. But
Right.
you know, I know that the cost is coming. Like
Yeah.
that helps. What about for you?
Yeah. I would say the biggest challenge is my family or loved ones just not understanding like my way, like me wanting to cook from scratch, gardening, like I don't know, just having different views compared to what like regular modern day society has. Just kind of dealing with that, I would say, kind of makes it difficult because people don't understand why you don't choose convenience over, spending a couple hours in the kitchen. I think like not even just family, like just friends, like they just won't understand it right away. And I think that's okay. Like they don't have to, but I think that is like one of the biggest challenges is just And also trying not to go back to, complete convenience as well, because that's really easy to do, like I've had weeks lately because we've been so busy that I feel like I say that in every podcast, but it's just such a busy time right now. I haven't been able to make sourdough bread loaves or anything like that. So, like, yeah, I'm gonna have to go get that at the store. Like, there's just no way I can spend the whole day baking bread, and there's gonna be weeks like that, and that's okay, because we have grocery stores for that reason. But I think it's also important to realize the value it brings to make your own food, and what's in it. And I mean, there's many, many more reasons, and the cost effectiveness of it as well. But I think that's the biggest challenge is some people don't see it that way. They just are like, just go get the bread at the store. Like, why are you spending 2 hours in the kitchen? you know, all about mindset, like you said earlier.
Well, and then you deal with the people who are like, oh my goodness, you're gonna go like crazy crunchy or like extreme. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, one, I'm not gonna go like completely off the deep end. Like, do
Right.
realize that I am still who I am. But like also like
Mm-hmm.
not everything is as straightforward and truthful as you would like, right? Looks are
Mm-hmm.
deceiving. The
Yep.
news, media, like so many things lie to us that like
Packaging,
yeah,
like the packaging will sell you too,
yeah.
and they can lie on labels. And yeah, I mean, you don't want to be paranoid, but you also want to have your eyes open to those things because you only have one body that you have to take care of.
Yeah. And I think it's like learning to walk the line, right? There's the tightrope
Mm-hmm.
between not caring at all, like
Yeah.
whatever's easiest, whatever's most convenient, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the world says. And then
Yeah.
there's the fear mongering side. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you do any of these things, your children are going to fall apart. Or if you have a
Right.
kid, like, if you do these things, then all the bad things that happen to you, like, you did it to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And like, there's the like there's the hyper negative side as well. And it's learning to
Yeah.
walk in the tension of like, I don't
Yeah.
expect myself to be perfect, but I'm making
Mm-hmm.
the best choice I can make with the information
Yeah.
I have right in
Mm-hmm.
front of me right
Yeah.
now.
And moderation, too, is important. Like, we try to avoid like the processed like seed oils and things, but this week we are having to get frozen waffles that have the sunflower or the canola oil and all that. We don't. That's not ideal, but with our schedule this week, it just makes sense. So like it's last minute, like we kind of got to do this, or I don't know what we're gonna have, type of thing.
It's
So I mean, not saying we're perfect,
no, and it's learning to hold. Like I feel like the last several years of my life, like I've been really constantly having to relearn how to hold tension, right? Two things
Mm-hmm.
can be true at the same time. Where do you find the space in between things? Where do you find where your feet are, and where are you going to
Yeah.
decide to put decisions and put
Mm-hmm.
things? And
Yeah.
does that mean what does that mean stepping away from? And there's always a cost to every decision you make. And it's, sometimes it's worth the cost, sometimes it's not worth the cost. And sometimes you don't even know the cost until it's too late, but you do the
Mm-hmm.
best with the information you have. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of the reason I'm choosing to live slow, because I've looked
Mm-hmm.
at the options. I look at the world around me. I see what it looks like, and I see other people's lives, and I don't want that. So I'm going to
Yeah.
choose differently. Do I?
Yeah.
Does that promise me a great outcome? No.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the choice I'm making with the information I have.
Yeah. 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 What is the biggest change you have experienced with, like, out of anything? I'm gonna have to think on this one too.
Yeah. So for me, I've had a lot of things is just more peace and less stress. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
right, finding simplicity when it comes to space and clothing and all of those things. Like, I'm not as overwhelmed by
Mm-hmm.
this amount of stuff I have. Like silly things like switching my wardrobe over to primarily natural fibers. Like, I hated this. I hate the
Mm-hmm.
feeling of scratchy, itchy polyester clothes, but like they were
Yeah.
easy and they were cheap and they looked good.
They're
And
everywhere.
like
Mm-hmm.
just dropping that, right? Like just dropping that out of my life. Little
Yeah.
changes that add Um,
Yeah.
and my mental health is a lot better. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't live in as much fear and anxiety. I'm much
Yeah.
more stable. I transitioned from a very physical, like on my feet, 8 to 10 hours a day job to a job where I sit
Mm-hmm.
at a desk 8 hours a day
Yeah.
about 2 years ago, and that transition was really hard. Up
Mm-hmm.
until the time every one of my jobs have been a very physical job, and finding myself like putting time and effort into creative hobbies that use my body, that use my brain in those ways has been super healing for like my stress and my anxiety, and to not feel the pressure that I felt at work.
Yeah.
The nonstop pace and keeping up and costs and reimbursement, like all of those things that there sure is. I work in sales, so there's still pressure every
Mm-hmm.
month. But I'm not responsible for that pressure. I just report on it. And that
Mm-hmm.
has been very freeing. And even when work is overwhelming, like I don't feel lost in
Mm-hmm.
in the fray.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I've noticed that I don't try to meet super like high standards that society gives you. You know, like you gotta be this way, you gotta live this way. Your house has to look like this. Like I kind of just live like how Paige wants to live. You know, like I live slower. Like just at a, I do things in my own time. I make my own routine that fits me. Um, you know, like society's like you got to work out at 6 a.m. Even though I do now, you don't have to. You know, like it's your choice. You don't have to just because someone says you need to do this morning routine to look 5 years younger or whatever. Like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to keep trying to keep up with the standards and these routines, and just do what fits you and your lifestyle. And slow living and intentional living has brought that to my life. Also, finding hobbies that are just a little bit like that make you practice patience, like gardening, has really taught me a lot. And I'm sure once I get into crocheting and sewing, like learning those skills are gonna help me practice patience. And I think that's the biggest thing that you know finding this intentional lifestyle has brought me, along with other skills like cooking from scratch more, um, getting high quality cookware, bakeware that will last years and years and years. I find that to be very valuable. It'd be really cool to pass whatever I have on to my kids, and then they can pass it on to their kids. It's just a cool thought. But yeah, I think just all of those things just have also, like you mentioned, brought my anxiety down quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm just a lot more chill. I've always been pretty chill of a person, but I don't worry as much anymore. Um, I've been, you know, just I don't know more. I don't know what to aligns like more just like me. I don't know,
Yeah.
just living life. If it gets stressful, I'm just like, well, what can I do like to make my life less stressful? But it's just
Yeah.
kind of just made my life more peaceful.
Yeah. So, what are some little things in the slow living realm that you're doing now that
Mm-hmm.
make a big positive impact?
Hmm. I would say I've noticed a lot of people do get up earlier and in this lifestyle, and I think it's because like there's no hustle bustle yet. Like you don't have to start doing anything. You can kind of just can have time to yourself. And I find I've been doing that as well. And it's like making time to work out in the morning before I have to do all the other priorities. Making that time for myself has been so awesome for my mental health and just makes me feel better. Um, and I would also say that being intentional on prepping your food for the whole entire week. Also, is awesome for your health, but also just great for stress levels.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to be like, what the heck? Like, we don't have any food. It's like, yes, you do. You made this. It's in the freezer. Just heat it up. Like, I'm so glad I did that. I think those are the two, like, major things. And then also just working on decluttering slowly as I clean each room of my house. Just getting rid of things. It does, like, it's amazing for your mental health. You just feel more at ease in your own home. I find that extremely beneficial.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think a lot of it is like learning. For me, I really enjoy like learning the skills and putting, as Jess always says, like turn your waiting room into a classroom. Like really trying
Mm-hmm.
to put. I have so much free time at this stage
Yep.
in my life. Like how do I productively use that free time? How do I balance and how do I learn the things that eventually I want to be automatic and
Mm-hmm.
feeling very confident in gaining skills and just I feel like over the last couple of years, I've slowed some of the input down, and I don't compare.
Mm-hmm.
There are still things that trip me up with comparison, but they're
Oh
a
yeah.
lot less than they used to be. And so, like refocusing my energy into how do I feel the most me? What am I doing that like fuels me? I feel the most me that I felt in a long time over the last 6 to 9 months, and like less than that actually, probably the last like 3 months. I felt like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, I'm me again, and I haven't
Same.
felt that since I was little. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, a lot of that comes from just slowing down and putting the work in,
Mm-hmm.
and not just running. I think the biggest thing for me is not running from the issues or the conflict or the uneasy feeling, but like pushing in and
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what's underneath and going through that work that the slow living really gives you time for has been
Mm-hmm.
super beneficial. I think that's
Yeah.
how it makes the biggest impact on my daily life is just doing the hard things even when I don't want to.
Yeah, 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 and it's hard, and it's easy. I think all of us humans, we like to just kind of like run away from the conflicts and the uneasy feelings of confrontation or whatever it may be. But you just kind of got to dive into it, or it'll forever feel like that. It'll never get better until you actually take hold of the problem. So
Yeah,
I find that
you got to balance.
extremely beneficial. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And it's interesting to see then how much you see in other people, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
feel yourself coming back to rest and you're like you look at other people and you feel empathy for their like frazzled state. You're like, I hate that you're doing that to yourself. And some
Mm-hmm.
people don't have control and some people don't realize it. But like it's like I don't envy people I envied before. I don't envy lifestyles.
Yeah.
Like I no, no thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
It's,
it's a big
it's
cultural
hmm
mental shift.
yeah, it's the high standards that everybody keeps trying to, you know, do. I mean, like in the beauty fitness world, because I follow a lot of people because I'm on my own weight loss journey right now, and I've just noticed like the amount of things people do to their bodies to get to the standard they like how they want to look. Now I understand like if you have loose skin, you need to go through that like skin removal process, but I don't know. I'm talking more like Botox and all of that. Like, I find that unnecessary, and like the standards people just keep trying to push on themselves. I'm like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to try to look this certain way. You can just be yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Why are you trying to like right compete with like people who that's their only life, like is taking care of the way they look, putting so much time
Yep.
and effort and money, and then airbrushing the heck
Hmm.
out of it, right?
Yeah.
So much of
Yeah.
it isn't real. I'm watching that transition get even worse. Like, I'm so grateful I didn't have social media when I was a kid in junior
Yeah.
high because
Hmm.
the amount of pressure to live in this world and the beauty standards and the image standards and all of that, like, it is overwhelming and it is so
Yeah.
wrong because you're being compared to things that aren't even real. And as we see in
Hmm.
the rise of AI generation and AI editing and all of these things, like reality is getting further and further from being present in social media, in the news,
Yep.
and all of those places. And it's like, okay, come back to
Yeah.
what do you actually want? Like, what do you
Hmm.
actually care about?
Yeah. What are you into? What are your preferences? What do you actually want to look like?
Yeah.
Like, like what are just stop thinking like others and think like yourself.
And that is actually going to be a follow up episode in about three
Exactly.
episodes about image and beauty.
Mhm.
So if you want to hear more about that, come back in about 3 weeks. I believe it's in three
Yes.
weeks according to the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. hopefully, if we
If
stick to the schedule.
everything works like it's supposed to.
It's coming up soon.
Yes. And actually, last thing before we leave you on this episode, when you're hearing this, if you're hearing this the day it gets off, we're actually in the car together, driving to
Yes.
Tennessee for the Homestead Festival at
Mm-hmm.
Rory Feeks. And we're very excited. We are
Oh
praying the
yeah.
rain away very
Oh my
intensely.
gosh. It's supposed to storm every day, and we're camping.
Yes.
So
So be praying for us if you check the weather. I did make my little brother look up the weather on his fancy flight stuff. My brother's being a pilot. It doesn't show the thunder. It shows rain, but it's showing a lot less
yeah,
thunderstorms, which is encouraging.
yeah. Let's just hope.
So the next 2 episodes you're going to hear are going to be about that and our experience there.
Mm-hmm.
But until
Yeah.
then, in general, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And in the meantime, keep on.